100 members, population, 2,000 population. And there he encountered the Union Army. Robert E. Lee had 75,000 soldiers. The Union Army had 93,000. It was a 3-day battle. At the end of that 3-day battle, Robert E. Lee suffered 28,000 casualties. These are dead and living, dead and wounded. And the Union suffered 23,000 dead and wounded. So on that field that was to be dedicated that day, 7,000 dead had been on those fields surrounding Gettysburg. In fact, 1,500 horses were killed during the battle. Someone said you could smell Gettysburg from miles around because it took them a long time to bury the dead and also to dispose of all of those horses. When Abraham Lincoln stood on that platform, well, first, the Governor Curtin, he was the governor of Pennsylvania, he declared that a national cemetery, and he invited a lot of speakers to come and music to be there. The keynote speaker took over an hour. When he wrote to President Lincoln, he said, please come and would you say a few words? That was the way he phrased the letter. And so Lincoln, of course, came, and as Abraham Lincoln stood on that platform, wooden platform holding a rail, he looked out at his audience. There were thousands there that day. And there were mothers who 4.5 months earlier had lost a husband. There were children who had lost a daddy. There were young wives who had lost a husband. It was a solemn occasion, very solemn. And there were, of course, hundreds of soldiers were there, those who had lost a leg or an arm. And Abraham Lincoln, he was emotional. And he stood there for a long time on that platform, looking out over that crowd. And this is what he said. 77 years ago, our fathers brought forth on this continent a new nation, conceived in liberty and dedicated to the proposition that all men are created equal. Now we are engaged in a great civil war, testing whether that nation or any nation so conceived and so dedicated can long endure. We are met on a great battlefield of that war. We have come to dedicate a portion of that field as the final resting place for those who here gave their lives that that nation might live. It is altogether fitting and proper that we should do this. But in a larger sense, we cannot dedicate, we cannot consecrate, we cannot hallow this ground. The brave men, living and dead, who struggled here have consecrated it far above our poor power to add or detract. The world will little note, no wrong remember what we say here, but it can never forget what they did here. It is for us, the living rather, to be dedicated here to the unfinished work which they who fought here have thus far so nobly advanced. It is rather for us to be here dedicated to the great task remaining before us, that from these honored dead we take increased devotion to that cause for which they gave the last full measure of devotion. That we here highly resolve that these dead shall not have died in vain, that this nation, under God, shall have a new birth of freedom, and the government of the people, by the people, for the people, shall not perish from the earth.
Amen. Amen.